That noise might be coming from Joanne's audio feed.
Okay, we are now ready.
Okay, thanks. Well, in case someone doesn't know, this is Lorraine. I'm going to introduce our topic for next week, December 20th, and I'm excited to do that because I have invited Tia Richardson. She's a community mural artist, and she owns her own design company, Cosmic Butterfly Design. The title is Creating of Community Through Art. And she says, I'm trying to understand what unity is through my art. I'm no expert, so this presentation, I'll be sharing some past projects to show examples of what I believe we might consider as evidence of the fact that we can work together despite our differences. And she's going to share about a community that has worked together and then made a mural together. And so I hope to see more of her action here in Milwaukee. I think she has some ties to UU, to our church through, I think, the youth program, but I could be wrong about that. She does have some artwork in the open area of the American Black Holocaust Museum, though. If you have been over there in that grassy open area, her artwork is on the wall there. Okay, I'm done. Thank you. I hope you can come next week.
Hi, this is BJ Ermans, and I am your host for today and a member of First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee since 2016. I want to let you know that captions will be available on the recorded version when it's posted on our First Church YouTube site. And I would like to ask you, please, during the presentation, to type your questions in the chat. Anne will do her presentation, and then we will go through all of your questions. Anne Reed is a one-time litigation attorney, and she has been the president and the CEO of the Wisconsin Humane Society since 2010. WHS is a model not only for animal welfare organizations, but for nonprofits in general. The facilities include our familiar Wisconsin Avenue location and also the counties of Ozaukee, Racine, Brown, and Door. They also offer support and advice to other animal welfare organizations as needed. Anne actively works to end the fragmentation of animal welfare organizations, in part to eliminate the need for animal euthanasia that is done simply due to lack of space and resources. I realized how much Anne could share with us when I read her communication to staff and volunteers in early June. Until then, I had no idea how committed she and our Wisconsin Humane Society were to social justice. I would like to give you just a brief paragraph from that email so you can see why it struck me so powerfully. We were formed to help correct inequity. From the very beginning, our reason for existence was injustice. Our finders saw the pain of animals and children who could not advocate for themselves and who were subjected to abuse. They created the Wisconsin Humane Society to be a voice for them. Our desire to amplify the voices of those who are silenced and abused is part of our DNA. Anne, thank you for all that you do and for being with us today. And I will turn it over to you.
Oh, BJ, wow, thank you so much. And thank you for your work as a volunteer for the Wisconsin Humane Society. You are awesome and we love you and thank you. I'm looking at your picture and that means I'm looking down when I should be looking at you all in my kitchen beyond you. Hi, I'm just so delighted to be talking to the UU community. I had some exposure to the UU traditions as a kid. To the extent our parents took us anywhere, they took us there. I've been a longtime admirer of the UU tradition and of the Unitarian Society's work in Milwaukee. Specifically, I have dear friends in your community, some on this call. And so I said yes right away when BJ asked me to do this, and I'm delighted to do it. I want to start with a video. Deep breath, make sure I can do this on the Zoom. I've been practicing. As I'll talk about a little bit later, and as BJ flagged in the program description, we have a program called Pets for Life, where we work in some of Milwaukee's most challenged communities, making friends and helping as much as we can there. And we had the privilege of being able to do a video where some of our clients in the Pets for Life program got to speak for themselves. They speak so much more powerfully than I do that I want to share that video first. So if just the technology, when I share this, I have to check some boxes so that some squares on my screen show up, but you should be able to fully see the video. Somehow yell if you cannot do that. Okay, here we go. Deep breath, cross your fingers. And we will check this box, hit this box, hit share, and pray.
So many people are scared to come into 53206 for very different reasons. We have the highest crime rate. We have the highest incarceration rate. They always say that you're 2 paychecks away from being homeless. So picture if you already have families that are disfranchised already, that don't really have an access to resources. Now you have COVID, that now you can't go and get things that you really need for your family. It's like having people in a prison cell. You're scared, you're angry, you're confused, you're hearing everybody around you dropping dead. And then when you're hearing that unemployment is not giving anyone money because it's backed up by the millions and systems were crashing, it makes you upset because now this family or this person doesn't have access to something basic. You have a whole generation of individuals that have been told constantly, you don't matter.
You know, a lot of us thought we weren't gonna make it to 25. I can't say I'm not nervous when I'm driving around with my kids. Cause I'm like, man, I'm trying to lose my life in front of my baby at all. Especially for a traffic stop. I got a lot of friends that's, you know, that got records and that's on paper, and you know, the smallest thing can send them back to jail. And then we dying in there from the corona, so it's, you out here dying, or you gonna die in there. Pick your poison. That's how it is. Like,
they talk about fighting to get out of poverty. I fought my way hard. Except it shouldn't be so hard for a person with a dog to find a place to live. How we're discriminated against because of our dog type, that is a prejudice. After losing my house, there was nobody to talk to with common sense, and they wouldn't let me get my stuff out of the house. All my pictures of my babies, I turned my cheek. Too many times in Milwaukee just take took me down the day I met you guys for Pet for Life. That saved me and my dogs. There were times I didn't know how I was going to feed them. There were times I didn't know how I was going to eat. I didn't know how to get their meds or whatever. But when I got that card that said Pet for Life, that was like a license to live for a long time.
We actually have a program that strictly to help us for our dogs. Like, it was wonderful because everybody go through moments. And you know, it's always feel good to be able to know you got somebody got your back.
Pets for Life, it's not just about your pet. It's about how you live your life. And it's about how we live our life down here in 53206.
So now I come back to the slideshow, and I hope to your faces. You didn't come. Oh, wait, I know. Wait. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that for a second. I didn't check the boxes back. Uncheck this box. Uncheck this box. And now the slideshow. Hit share. And now I can see you. Beautiful. Okay. So with that as a beginning, and then I'll be filling context in around what you've heard as I go along. Let's talk about what social justice means at the Wisconsin Humane Society and in the animal welfare movement. The first thing you need to know is that our organizations are related. We are cousins. The guy who helped found us to do all those great things that BJ quoted me as saying, he basically refounded U2. This guy, I'm sorry for the quality of the picture, it's the best one I've got. Someday I'll write his biography. His name was Gustavus Ede Gordon. He was born in the United Kingdom. He went to divinity school at Harvard in Boston, and in 1875 he moved to Milwaukee to become the minister of the First Unitarian Society. The society was struggling. It had closed its doors for a while, reopened, closed again. They were spotty with being able to hold services and so on. And when this guy showed up, you never closed your doors again. And this your building was built pretty soon after. 4 years after he came to town, he helped found us at a meeting in December of 1879 where, let's see, gosh, who all was there? Samuel Marshall, who founded a bank called Marshall and Ilsley, was the first treasurer of our organization. General, in Lake Park, the statue, I'm picturing him, Erastus Wolcott. That meeting was one of the last meetings he went to. He died a few months later. But Reverend Gordon was one of the people who was there and became the first president of the Wisconsin Humane Society. The Red Cross here in Milwaukee, Associated Charities, now actually still active now as Aurora Family Services, was founded by this guy. There's a wonderful quote in the Milwaukee Sentinel that says, "His broad views and strong manner of expressing them soon made him prominent, and it seemed as if no public matter could go on without his being consulted." I love this guy. He has a checkered history and a bit of a sad finish to it all. And one of the reasons he's so cool and so interesting is in the 1870s and 1880s, he was helping the forces in this community that wanted to see change, that saw a need and wanted to see something happen to fix it. This guy, your guy, the minister of your church, was the one who was making those things happen. And I think that's especially relevant today because we're at another time where there are needs and we have to think differently, and we have to create things and create approaches that did not exist before if we want to address the things that are happening now. So we need the energy that your church brought in the 1870s and that I think your church is bringing today to make these things happen. Fast forward a little bit just to give you an overall sense, and BJ covered some of this. What do we do today, the Wisconsin Humane Society? We're best known for reuniting and rehoming homeless animals. That's what everybody thinks animal shelters do, and we do that. We do a bunch more things as well. Families seeking escape from domestic violence can house their animals temporarily with us. Spay neuter services by the thousands, youth programs by the thousands, behavior training, some of the best training you can get to help you manage your own animal is at the Wisconsin Humane Society. Wildlife rehabilitation for thousands of injured and orphaned animals in Milwaukee. We advocate for animals, and the community outreach that you're going to hear about today. As BJ said, we're in Milwaukee, Racine, Ozaukee, Brown, and Door counties. We are the primary animal sheltering, animal welfare organization in each of those areas. Something I didn't know when I took this job, everybody else is not us. Everybody else is not us. Why? Because this work goes so deep in the heart. Lorraine, you're a wonderful listener. I love how you nod and I just thank you. It's really great. This work goes so deep in the heart that it was started so early in our nation's history that really the technology and the travel wasn't in place, and to build some sort of big unified thing. And then it just never got unified. So this work, there's nobody to be a chapter of. The organizations you see commercials for, like the ASPCA, do not have networks of shelters. They do other kinds of work for animals. So every organization is separate. And as BJ said, I have a strong view that that actually creates a lot of frailty in smaller organizations, and that coming together as we have done with the 4 organizations that used to be separate organizations in these non-Milwaukee counties where we now work is a thing that's good for the field of animal welfare. But that's just an FYI. It's not what we're talking about today. Social justice and animal welfare. I really hope that at least some of you end up feeling a little challenged by some of the things I'm going to say, because animal welfare has been very, very slow, not only to embrace social justice, but to let go of some approaches that were absolutely and are absolutely contrary to social justice. And animal welfare has gotten really tied to some practices and policies and approaches and beliefs and philosophies that are unquestionably, systemically affecting some groups much more negatively and some groups much more positively. And this is a time when the entire animal welfare movement and the Wisconsin Humane Society are looking at what we do at WHS, as I'll explain. I'm proud to say we were a good ways down the road already, and yet there's more work for everyone to do. You hear my cat meowing in the background. And so what I want you to be asking yourself as we go along here is, I mean, I know you guys are UUers. Your commitment, your individual commitment to social justice, I feel absolutely confident everybody on the call is as far there as they can get and are working hard to challenge yourselves. And yet I'm guessing that most of you haven't thought about this from the point of view of what animal welfare organizations do. And I hope, hold on a second. Couscous and I hope, he's my Zoom buddy, he's on all my calls, that you do feel a little bit challenged, feel your mind opening and expanding a little bit, and that I hope you will have questions about that, because it's a place in our minds that we don't normally let our social justice commitment open that door. And as you'll see, it's critically, as you already saw in the video, it's critically important. So first, let's talk about social justice outside of our shelters. That's our Emily and one of our Pets for Life clients. So let's talk about what we can do outside the shelter for families and animals that supports them and supports social justice. First of all, let's just be sure we all understand it's a wonderful thing that there are a whole lot more animals outside our shelters than in. And animal sheltering never started, animal welfare never started as animal sheltering. When Gustavus Gordon founded us, there was no shelter. It was an organization for advocacy and for essentially a law enforcement cruelty type response. Sheltering came later. It has become a very important thing that we do for the community. But in any given year, our 5 shelters take in about 17,000 animals, which is a lot. We're a big organization you can be proud of. And in any given year, across the 5 communities we serve, more than 1 million animals live outside our shelters. And of those, roughly 155,000 are living in poverty. How do we know that? Because roughly that proportion of people are living in poverty. And we know that people in poverty have pets at about the same rate that people who aren't in poverty have pets. Why? Because people who are in poverty love animals in the same way that people who aren't in poverty love animals. So there are a great many pets in poverty in our community. And like people in poverty, they have needs. Our goal is to improve quality of life for animals and the people who love them. And that's what this program is about. So outreach used to sound something like this. We'd like to educate you about your animal. We want people to be responsible pet owners. Read, you're irresponsible. And we have programs to teach you to be a responsible pet owner. If you want to take advantage of those programs, get out of your house, get on the bus, bring your documentation, come to our shelter. We weren't trying to be arrogant. We weren't trying to be exclusive. This was just what people thought helpful looked like. And behind all that, what was behind all that? We were judging, we were putting ourselves in a position where we were the educators and somebody else needed to be educated. We knew what responsible was, and we wanted other people to be responsible. We wanted to see proof and documentation. And it wasn't helpful, right? You're just going to reach fewer people, and you're going to you're going to help fewer people improve quality of life for themselves and their animals when you're coming from that place. People have understood that for a long time in the human services community, not throughout, but that understanding has been there. It has taken longer to get to animal welfare. We started Pets for Life in 2012, and it has an entirely different approach. What are the assets that this family brings? Love is the biggest one, and there are lots of others. How can we partner with this family to improve quality of life? How can we get this family access to the resources they need? How can we understand what are the challenges and often the traumas that this family has undergone and has undergoing? So our language is not, here's what you need to know. It's what do you need? Would a front closing harness help? Would a collar help? Would food help? How are you doing? And now we know the name of the animal. So how is Smokey doing? How is that thing you were working on? Meeting people where they are, figuring out what better than that looks like for them. That's the basic approach of the Pets for Life program. I always talk about the unit of change. The unit of change is a friend at a door. That's our Emily again. She's one of our 3 full-time Pets for Life staffers. And the whole idea of this is if you can get your friend what your friend needs, now you're talking change. So where do we work? Here's a map of our community. The yellow is 53206. The sort of purplish below that is 05. And then we serve the neighborhoods around there, as you see. So Franklin Heights, Metcalf Park, Walnut Hill, and so on. That's our service area. About 35,000 pets live there. When we first started in 2012, we had met 0 pets and 0 families. We've now met many, many thousands. I hope I have a nice statistic here about how the spay-neuter rate in the community has changed since we've been there. And there are very few things like community change you can take credit for, but it's pretty amazing. In this community, as you probably know, it's overwhelmingly one race. It is a Black neighborhood. 91% of our families are Black. Roughly half live below the poverty line. a third live at half of the poverty line, which is $12,000 a year for a household of 4. That's who we're serving. And what we are doing, almost more than anything else, is learning how much we don't know and how much difference it will make if we can replace judgment with understanding of circumstances and trauma and differences. So let me just give you some examples of that. Replacing judgment with understanding. So this is a real picture of a real guy who told our team, I don't care about this dog. And for somebody who's chosen animal welfare as a career, you can't say too much that would be more of a trigger than I don't care about this dog, right? To an animal welfare professional. But our team has learned not to start judging at this moment, but instead to start asking at this moment. So our team member says, tell me about that. What do you mean? And here's what the guy said. My cousin's dog. I don't know if he's going to come back and get her. If he comes back and takes her away, that's going to hurt. I don't want to get attached to her. I don't want to develop that love and lose that love. If she stays, I will give her my heart. Imagine if we hadn't asked. Imagine how many people would not have asked. Replacing judgment with listening and understanding. Replacing judgment with understanding when you see somebody with a lot of pets. Again, that's a huge trigger for people in our world. Too many pets, you are hoarding, you are hurting animals, you can't care for all those animals. And I'm not saying a whole bunch of animals is a great thing for animals. It's not. But let's just listen. If somebody had more animals than they could comfortably handle and you knew them, what would you tell them to do? Call us, right? Well, the level of awareness that we and anybody else having to do with animal health has been able to create in this community is almost non-existent. Even now, when we contact a new client, one of the things we ask them is, have you ever contacted Animal Control or the Humane Society for any reason at all? You want to adopt, you want to give up your animal, there's a stray animal in your yard, you found a dead bird, whatever. Don't call us for dead bird, by the way. We asked that question, and 70% of people have never had any contact for any reason whatsoever. We ask whether your animals are spayed or neutered. When we were first doing this in 2012, this is the number I was hoping was in here to give you. We said, is your animal fixed? 91% of people said no. The number of animals that when we were first talking to people who were altered when we first met them was the single digit 9. In your neighborhood, if you live in a neighborhood with any sort of decent resources, I can guarantee you that number's closer to 80. But in the central city, it was 9%. It's more than 60% now because of the work of our team. But the fact is, if you don't know anybody who knows anybody who's ever neutered their animal, why would you consider doing that? Do you know what that surgery is? So let's just understand that it's not, you hear all the time in this work, they don't believe in spay neuter. They don't believe in getting medical help. It's a question of us not having made the resources available and even the awareness available that those resources are there and that they would be helpful. Financial access. Let's just look at, before we start judging, let's just look. If nearly half of these families live below the poverty line and a third are below half of that, is it even really remotely possible that all of those people have some sort of personal defect that has limited their earnings to this effect? Of course not. We know, and I'm sure you've heard a lot from other sources about the impact of historical injustices on wealth and revenue in these communities. It's not for us to judge, it's to understand how it got that way. People moving a lot, getting evicted, that's bad for animals, say people in my work. Let's do something about that. Well, if 80% of people being evicted are people of color and 62% of them are women, and in this community, 2/3 of people are renting in the first place and thus subject to being evicted, again, let's look at the systemic causes for that kind of instability before we focus on judging individuals. Disruption from incarceration, both in families with animals and then just the enormous disruption in the community itself because of incarceration. Again, I'm sure you've heard a lot about this from people who know more than I do, but it is an enormous trauma and terror of the community fabric in these communities, the degree of incarceration that we are facing and imposing there. And then health, again, you haven't been to a veterinarian. 68% of our clients have not yet accessed veterinary care. Well, that's our Dr. Weiss on the left, and that's our Emily in the middle, and 2 Pets for Life clients on the right. Let's take care of that. Let's replace that judgment with understanding. It matters. This is the same dog before and after. When you offer somebody the resources and information that they need, it makes an enormous difference to that smiling animal. And it makes an enormous difference to families. So that's what we're doing. And we have learned a great deal from it. And that has led us to the second part of what I want to talk about, which is that's all work outside the shelter. But inside the shelter, every day, over the course of a year, 17,000 animals are going to come in, and our job is to either reunite those animals with their families if that's possible, because a lot of them were stray, and to find new homes for them if reuniting them with their family is not possible. And when you're out in the community, when you've got wonderful people out in the community every day, helping, learning to replace judgment with understanding, bringing that understanding back to the rest of our organization. The cool thing is it's going to change you from the heart out. And so that brings us to, what about in our sheltering work? What about the rehoming and reuniting that we do? And this is where you may start to feel a little bit challenged, and I hope that you do. I want to start, and I hope I'll remember to finish by saying, yes, of course, we are looking for the safety of every animal we place, and we want to be sure that we are placing animals in homes that will support them adequately, right? But, or maybe we should say, and, who is it who is qualified to adopt that animal? And if you go out into the animal sheltering community, you will find a lot of things that won't surprise you until you start to think about these things. So, are you disqualified from adopting an animal because you're poor? If we decided that, if we said everybody who's poor, no animals, we'd be excluding 1 in 4 African-American families and only 1 in 10 white families. Do we want to have a rule that has that racial, absolutely that racial impact on the community? Ask yourself that. What about not so much income, but wealth? Do you need to own a house, have assets, have bank accounts, have all those things? Does that make you qualified to own an animal? Historic differences in the way wealth has been able to be accumulated and passed down to generations, not just through directly bequeathing wealth from generation to generation, but for example, parent has the money to pay for a college education, so child has a college education, so child earns more and is able to pay for that child's college education. Remember that it was illegal for owned persons to do any of this until the late 1800s, whereas white families have been doing it for time immemorial. So of course, well, there are huge gaps in the net worth of families based on race. What about home ownership? We think your animal's going to be in better shape if you own a home. In Milwaukee, 70% of white people own homes and only under 30% of Black people. Do you want to have a rule that has that kind of impact on different racial groups? Does access to supplies and healthcare make you qualified to get an animal? Well, if you live in, this is our Pets for Life service zone. The blue dots are veterinarians' offices, and the green dots are essentially big box stores where you can easily get pet food for free. Are we going to tell all several 100,000 people who live in that neighborhood? I wish I could rattle that off. I can't. That they're not qualified to own an animal because they don't live close enough to some of this stuff. What if you're sick, right? It's hard to take care of an animal when you're sick. We all know that. So are we looking for people who are healthy and saying, if you're not healthy enough, you're not qualified to own an animal? Again, we would be excluding enormous numbers of Black adopters if we had rules like that. But what about loving your animal? Each of the people that you are looking at on this slide has something that no other person on the planet can bring, which is the unique thumbprint of a relationship between them as a loving human and that dog as a loving dog. You can't duplicate that. Yeah, you can rehome an animal, and I'm not going about these specific ones now because they're doing just fine. But we can take a stray animal, put it in a new home, and it will be loved there. But it won't be this love. This love that you were looking at here is absolutely irreplaceable, and that is the thing that these people bring. These three people that you're looking at, and many people like them, that no one else can bring for that animal. These dogs are happy. These dogs are loved. And here's the thing, and this is why the Wisconsin Humane Society is actually pretty, I'm only saying pretty good because I'm trying to be modest, but we are darn good at making sure that we are making those choices in a way that supports everyone. It's because it's also good for animals. We've known for a long time that the absolute key to doing this work well is not, it's cool that I have a demo animal here, hanging on to this animal and saying, I'm not, now he's like, I don't like that. I'm going to wait and look for the perfect home for this animal. I'm going to look through 10 applications and find the best one for this animal. I'm going to find the one that has a fence or doesn't have a fence, depending on how I feel about fences. I'm going to wait for the perfect adopter. That point of view in animal sheltering, even leaving any sort of race questions aside for a minute, is really bad for animals. People think it's good for animals, and it is bad for animals. Why? The worst thing you can do in this business is crowd up your shelter. Crowded shelters put animals closer together. And as we are all, as human beings, learning in spades during this pandemic, close together is bad. Germs travel over short distances. When animals in shelters catch diseases from each other, they get sick and some die. And we can't adopt them out now right away because they're sick, and we want to get them better in the shelter. So they're staying in the shelter. Meanwhile, animals are still coming in. They're now closer together, catching diseases from the ones who are already there. Some of this is your stray dog who's going to come back to you and maybe have gotten sick in the shelter. Crowded is not only bad, it's literally the worst thing you can do. Space is good, right? Space is good. You make space by getting animals out fast. The analogy I always use is on the highway. If you decide to drive, let's say you go to our Ozaki shelter to adopt an animal, and you don't see one you like, and you really want to adopt an animal today, so you get on 43 and you go up to our Green Bay shelter because you want to adopt an animal there. So now you're on 43 and the traffic is flying along. And then something happens in the southbound lane, and people are slowing down to see what's happening over there. What happens to the cars on your side? They're closer together, right? Nothing has happened to push them closer together on your side. There aren't any more than there ever were, but they're closer together. Slow pulls everything closer together. Fast spreads everything far apart, which keeps animals healthy, which means you can get them out fast, which means the ones who come in can stay healthy because they've got a more spacious shelter. So fast is good, slow is not only bad, but life-threatening to animals in your care. So what does that mean? If you are hanging on to every animal, waiting 2 weeks to see if somebody more perfect comes along, you can, if you're running a small rescue, that's totally fine because you've only got 11 dogs in care and you're going to wait to add and to let somebody give you another one, and so you can pass on one that you have, and you're just decided to work on that scale. But we're the primary organization serving a third of Wisconsin's animals and families who are bringing us 17,000 animals a year. We know that most people are good. We know that most people will be perfectly good homes for animals, and we know that if we wait for perfection, we're putting literally thousands of animals at risk of very unpleasant deaths from illness. So we were already in that place of fast is good, and in order to be fast, you've got to believe in people. So when the discussion about racial equity changed in such a painful but welcome way in this past year, for us, what it did was reinforce in a different way what we were already doing. Whether you're committed to racial equity, whether you're doing it because you're committed to racial equity, or whether you're doing it because you're committed to keeping animals healthy, you have to believe in the good in all people. Certainly there are folks who come to us where the discussion that our counselor ends up having is maybe this isn't the right time. Um, and certainly we do deny adoptions. There's no, that's our job. We need to do that, but we have to come from a place of believing in everyone. And that means believing everybody is good. And it means questioning ourselves deeply about anything we're doing that would have a disproportionate impact by race, and seeing whether there's a way that we can bring what's driving that concern for the animal, of course, but how can we bring that in a way that recognizes the good in all people? How can we do both? How can we challenge ourselves to do this work in a way that makes sure the love is still happening, and make sure that every place an animal could be loved, they're having a chance to be loved and cared for in that family. That is my presentation. Went a little longer than I thought. Let me look at the chat. This is really eye-opening. Thank you very much. Anne's question, have the numbers of animals in the shelters increased during the pandemic? Get that question a lot, and the answer is no, with some explanation and some footnote. So overall, happy fact, I'm delighted to share with you, the number of animals becoming homeless in this country is falling steadily and has been for the last decade or decade and a half. So the overall trend along the trend line on the Excel graph is down, not up, and that's wonderful. It means that more people are making choices that keep their animals from becoming homeless, from not letting their cat out to insisting that their next home will be animal friendly, walking your dog on leash, many other things, spay, neuter, things like that. During the pandemic, first of all, we were very concerned that people would become sick and would need to give up their animals because they were ill. We did a huge push around make a plan for your pet. So because it's obviously better if your animal can go to your neighbor or your niece and not into the shelter if you become sick. And between that, because that was really a national, lots of us did that, a national push. And just the way the pandemic rolled out, we did not see any direct influx of animals of any size because of the pandemic. At the same time, so the big thing that we had to, so that's the short answer to your question. It triggers a little bit more, so let me give you a little bit more. At the beginning, we really wanted to just eliminate as much human interaction as we possibly could. And there's some of our intake that we can adjust the faucet a little bit. The biggest one is we're able to help overcrowded shelters in other regions, especially in the southern United States. And we can say yes or no to those requests to take animals from them. And for the early part of the pandemic, we cut all of that off, and we've been very careful with that faucet since. The biggest issue for us right now, frankly, is not directly how many animals there are, how many animals we can care for. It's with this influx in the virus in the fall, we have staff who ended up having been in close contact with somebody with the virus, and for a couple of weeks we actually had to shut down most of our activity in Door County and Sturgeon Bay because we had enough people exposed that we just didn't have people left to take care of the animals there, which, because we have 5 locations, was not that much of a sweat from an animal point of view. We just moved them to other places for a while, and now we're back up and running in Door. So there are, we've asked our law enforcement partners who are bringing us stray animals in 4 of our 5 communities for a while we were saying emergencies only, please, and now we're allowing that to open up a little bit more again. Same with families who might need to surrender their animal. So directly, no. There certainly are, though, lots of population decisions that we have to make most weeks because of the pandemic. Pat, when working with Community Shares of Greater Milwaukee, yay, our international visitors were dismayed that our donors frequently chose humane societies in the United States. This connection of caring for animals is a justice issue as well. You're absolutely, absolutely right, as you so often are, Pat McFarland. And there's just a lot of interesting stuff there, almost a whole nother talk. There's a whole sort of musical thread in this work of why should I support animals when there are so many humans in need? That's just a question that gets asked from time to time, and there are 2 answers to it. One is the one that Pat just gave, which is that there is, animals mean so much to us that every time you help an animal, you really are helping a human as well. So that's helpful to some people. For others, I just end up saying, God bless, I'm so grateful for what you're doing in human services, and I hope you keep doing it. And it's fine if you send your support there, because the fact is, human beings are they have different factory settings. And for every person who says, I have a deep need to support programs that directly support people, and again, right, this house is in the city of Milwaukee that I'm sitting in right now. I'm so grateful to everybody who does any kind of good work here. But for every person who says that, there's somebody else who says, I'm grateful for the work that's being done for human beings in my community, but I must speak for the most voiceless, for those who can defend themselves the least, and for me, that's animals. So my job is to find those people and let them know what a difference they're making to this work, and how powerful. We are overwhelmingly supported by individual donations. We're not like your higher education institution that relies primarily on tuition, or your hospital that relies primarily on medical fees, or a lot of human services organizations that rely primarily on government grants. We're supported by the loving hearts of individuals, and I'm really grateful to them. All right. Is there a program, Lorraine, is there a program for helping the homeless with pets? There is not a direct program like that in Milwaukee right now, and there should be. It was funny, I practiced this presentation last night with my daughter, who is a recent graduate of the University of Colorado, and she said, I took a course, and my teacher, in fact, I may try to find this and post it in the chat. She had a professor who wrote a book, and the subtitle is Homeless People and Their Animals, or some such. And the main title is something like He Eats Before I Do. The depth of stories of homeless people and their animals it's really, really powerful. I will guess, and I don't know this for sure, but just based on what I see, many more homeless people have animals in warmer cities. I just don't, when you go to some warmer cities, you see not just a lot more homeless people, which makes sense, but you also see a lot more homeless people with animals. And I can't say that there's a correlation, but I'd be actually interested in looking into that. That being said, anywhere there are homeless people, because everyone loves animals, anywhere there are homeless people with animals. Some are living in cars to shelter those animals. Certainly, whether you have a home or not, if you are financially challenged, many people are feeding their animals first. And there are huge issues around, oh, thank you, way to go, BJ. There are huge issues around helping homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters support the need for families who need that shelter, supporting their need to help their animal. And I'm involved in a lot of discussions about that. We have, as I said, a small program that I'm super proud of with Sojourner Family Peace Center, but the need goes far, far beyond what we're able to serve through that program, or what we could build, even if somebody dropped a whole bunch of money on us for it. And we need to move structurally towards somehow creating a larger scalable solution for those folks. Jerry, I wasn't aware of your social justice program. That sounds amazing. Thank you very much. About how many of your staff are directly involved in the inner city? And if you find people as well as animals need services, do you help direct them? Two great questions. The Pets for Life program, I'll admit, is smaller than any of us would like it to be. There are 3 full-time people working that program, and a manager, but 3 full-time people knocking on doors. They never stopped during the pandemic. They were leaving stuff on porches. They were on the phone so that people knew they were coming. They were checking on people on the phone. And luckily by that time, their friendships were so deep already that you could move to the phone and make some difference. But we're not doing this yet in Racine or Green Bay or Milwaukee's near South Side, and all of those places, and anywhere where there's geographically specific poverty, this program can make the same difference that it's making where we're doing it. So we're looking for, and this isn't a pitch to you, you just asked the question and it's true, we're looking for a sustainable funding that would let us not only continue but expand this work. We know it works. We know it would work wherever it was dropped. If you find people as well as animals need services, do you help direct them? Yes, and our team has become quite knowledgeable about that kind of thing. One complication that sometimes comes in there is there are people who want to support us and they want to bring their thing to our thing. And their thing is often really wonderful. I was talking to a foundation that was interested in helping to fund Pets for Life if we were also registering people to vote. Now, I wanted those people to be registered to vote, and the money would have been really nice, but our team really felt that a friendship is a tricky thing to weigh down with anything because of money, and these friendships are real, and they're based on a shared love of a specific animal. And we ended up saying no to that. So your question, do we direct people, is, you've used exactly the right word. We direct people. We do not try to partner in a closer way, at least not right now. The other thing we have a really strong sense of humility about is our own skill set around this stuff. So take Sojourner, for example. It's a requirement in our Sojourner program that you be working with Sojourner. Why? Because we don't have anything like the expertise that you need in so many other aspects of your situation, other than just finding a place for your animal to be. So we want to be really sure that somebody's in the right hands when they're coming to us for that reason. I hope that answered your question. The Humane Society helped keep community shares going. We're grateful to community shares, so that goes both ways for sure. Could you please give us the link to donate for the Pets for Life program? What a lovely question, Ian McIntyre. I am glad to do that. And maybe somebody could, let me just, I'm not going to screen share. I'll tell you what, if somebody, BJ, what it can be is just the donate page from the website. And then there's a place to put a note on your donation and just say you're donating to Pets for Life. And thank you so much. Every amount matters. So thank you so very much for that. It's not required. And my email, if you want, if that doesn't work, or if you have any other questions to follow up, we're all first initial last name at wihumane.org. So I'm Reed, AREED at wihumane.org. I will put that in the chat. And I love talking to people, so feel free to reach me for any reason. What else? Did I challenge you?
Yes, if anybody else has questions now, please unmute yourself.
And I want to thank you so much for the information that you shared with us. And folks, you can also email me for questions about getting a hold of Anne. And the opportunities are many, especially when we get vaccinated and things open up a little bit more in terms of volunteers for helping with the Pets for Life program. And we are getting near the end of the year too. So if you can share with funds, that is much appreciated. As you know, even little bits help. So we're grateful for all. And you just covered so much wonderful ground, and it was as eye-opening for me as for everyone else. So thank you so much for all that you shared with us.
It's a privilege to talk to you. It's a privilege to do this work in your name. Our goal is always to make you proud, and we won't let go of that part, because we know that we're only the lights are on down there today. There are people down there working, and that's literally because of you. So thank you.
I have one last question. Do you make pet supplies available for people who just can't afford them?
Yeah. So in addition, directly in Pets for Life, that's a conversation that our team is having a lot. Separately from that, for many years we've run a food pantry, and we run it at each of our campuses. We can and do gladly accept donations for the food pantry as well. People give us donations in kind, and they donate directly for it. Anytime somebody drops off a bag of dog food at our shelter, which happens most days, that goes straight into the food pantry. And so free food is something that we do a lot of. Interesting fact, just from the social justice point of view, for many years, you had to show documentation to get free food from the food pantry. And then our team, this was actually 2 or 3 years ago, it wasn't directly in response to the most recent racial justice conversation, but our team said, look, number one, it's taken a lot of work to check all the stuff. Number two, it's hard for people to find their documentation. And number three, if you think you need free food, most people who think they need free food. So let's just let go. And they just let go. And we stopped asking for documentation of any kind, except one thing. We wanted to know, where do you live, which we had tracked before. And what we found almost immediately is we served more people living in Milwaukee's poorest neighborhoods by proportion and by number after we let go of that requirement than we did before. The requirement was keeping us from making the difference that we wanted to make.
I'd like to add, if I could, that if you are doing any cleaning out of closets and things, keep in mind that the Humane Society handles not just dogs and cats, but also rabbits and many, many other creatures. And they have a wildlife rescue program. So even things like socks are very helpful, because little birds like to huddle in the socks for little bitty birdie blankets. So the website is wonderfully helpful as far as to what types of things they can use. So we can think outside the box for that one.
That's a great one. There's a wish list online. Thank you all. Honestly, it's been a privilege, and thank you for the conversations that you're having and convening in our community. It matters that you're there, and I, for one, am really grateful.
And thank you for what you do and your whole family. It's
Thanks.
quite a group. Got a team there.
I'm the slacker in the family. All right. Thank you, everybody, so very much.
At this
Bye-bye.
time, I'm gonna